Hi, this is Jim Walden sitting in for Harry Littman. With all the big news swirling around, much of it on international wars, corrupt politicians, and dysfunctional institutions, today I wanted to spend some time focusing your attention elsewhere, to another time and another place. The place is a small city 30 miles southeast of Nashville, Tennessee, and it's called Murfreesboro. That's Murfrees if you want to look it up. You can see it on the city's website. It actually looks pretty idyllic. It touts a generous quality of life and a high standard of living. It invites newcomers. Its website offers useful advice on the where, what, and who of the city. Where is the public library? What services are provided to senior citizens? Who provides fire services? If you lived in one of the city's more diverse communities, you might send your kids to Hobgood Elementary School. Even its name evokes warm images. I myself pictured Hogwarts from the Harry Potter series. It has its own motto: perseverance, integrity, and empowerment. The website goes on to proclaim that the school, quote, aims to ignite in each child a passion for lifelong learning and global citizenship. By encouraging democracy in the classroom, the students will become curious and engaged critical thinkers of tomorrow. Pretty lofty stuff. Founded in 1855, it boasts being designated as a NASA Explorers School, a National Title I Distinguished School, and various other accolades. And it emphasizes its continuous, solid partnerships with the community it serves. And if you were the parent of a child enrolled at Hobgood in 2016, you surely would have met its affable and capable principal, Tammy Garrett. On any given day, you would find her roaming the halls, consulting with teachers, bonding with students, and partnering with parents. She was effusive about her kids. Having suffered during her own childhood, she knew the magic involved with mentoring kids. She would often say, "We have good kids, we have talented kids, we have well-behaved kids." She wanted to help open doors for quote unquote her kids, and not the doors to prison cells. But if you were with her on April 15th of 2016 on that sunny spring day, you would have seen her stand against other parts of the county bureaucracy, which had a much different goal in mind. It all started with a video published on YouTube earlier in the spring. It was created by a smartphone using a filter, so it obscures the faces and other physical characteristics of the people that are depicted, or I should say, the children depicted. Based on what you can see and hear, they look and sound young, very young. But what you can see on the video is that two very small kids were picking a fight with a taller child, with a host of other kids shouting in the background. The taller kid, the victim, did not seem to engage. He moved away from the would-be attackers. He did not appear to be injured. He didn't fall down. But a number of kids can be heard on the video encouraging the two attackers, while there were some voices calling the kids off. All the kids in the video appeared to be black or brown. This video came to the attention of a police officer of the Murfreesboro Police Department, Crystal Templeton. In her roughly 20 years on the force, Templeton reportedly had been disciplined more than 30 times, including 9 suspensions. But Templeton was enraged by the video. She called it egregious. She wanted to round the kids up and bring them before the presiding judge of the Rutherford County Juvenile Justice System, which covered Murfreesboro. That judge was a woman named Donna Scott Davenport. We'll learn more about her in a couple minutes. But before doing that, before rounding up the kids, Officer Templeton had 2 small problems. First, she needed to identify the kids, and you couldn't see their faces. The second, she needed to find a law that they had broken. We'll never find out why it was so important to her, but she solved the first problem by accosting a 10-year-old who was at the event and had her identify the people that she could remember being there. The witness wrote down the names on a sheet of paper leaning over the hood of a car with her mother standing watch, with Officer Templeton telling the mother repeatedly, quote, "No one was in trouble. I just want to give them a talking to." But Officer Templeton still needed to solve the second problem: how to charge the onlookers. Now, she had determined, oddly enough, that the 2 would-be attackers were so young, they were only about 5 or 6, that no assault charge would stand. but she wanted to make an example of the onlookers. How to charge them was her question. Now, this is another odd twist in the story. In Murfreesboro, charging decisions like this one were not left to prosecutors or judges. Rather, the county had created positions called quote unquote judicial commissioners. The jobs are open, believe it or not, to anyone with a driver's license who holds a high school diploma. No legal training is required. The job reportedly pays $8.50 an hour. So Officer Templeton consulted with two of these judicial commissioners, Amy Anderson and Sherry Hamlet. No judge, no prosecutor. The three settled on a theory, a statute that purported to define, quote, criminal responsibility for the conduct of another as the central crime engaged in by these onlookers. Warrants were actually issued. It came to light later on, after a full investigation, that the warrants suffered from a fundamental infirmity. The alleged offense was not actually defined as a crime under the laws of Tennessee. But with warrants in hand, the day of reckoning had come on April 15th of 2016, and that takes us back to Principal Garrett. Now, the Murfreesboro Police Department, in its infinite wisdom, decided to arrest the children at school. Now, I could discuss this decision for a whole nother episode. I could discuss the psychological consequences to the children, both those arrested and those that observed, the educational disruption, the impact on the community, the larger impact on society, including the grave distrust sowed among the parents of kids who were arrested at the school. But for today's purposes, I hope we can all just agree on a less lofty characterization of this decision. It was simply bananas. To her great credit, Tammy Garrett pushed back. But the lead officer at the scene, who is, by the way, a member of the police department's SWAT team, and who had come to the arrest site at the school wearing a tactical vest to arrest 4 girls that were aged 8 to 11, would not budge. And Principal Garrett did everything in her power to stop or deter them. She begged the police not to do this. She tried shaming them. When she realized that one of the members of the arrest team, who happened to be African American, was very sympathetic to her position, she tried to pit the officers against her. And as Principal Garrett later testified during a probe of this whole saga, the lead detective became so enraged at her trying to obstruct this investigation that he threatened her by holding handcuffs up to her face, implying, "Lady, knock it off or you're next." Despite her valiant efforts, the police walked 3 of the girls away in handcuffs as school buses idled by with other kids on them. One of the arrested girls was 8 years old in pigtails. The 4th suspect was spared only because she had a scheduled dialysis appointment right after school. In all, 11 kids were arrested in this debacle, ages 8 to 12. And if it wasn't so sad and tragic, we might make light of it by likening it to Alice's Restaurants Massacre from Arlo Guthrie fame. But this isn't a fable. This happened in America in 2016. And worst of all, it was not an isolated problem. Rutherford County had been warned years earlier about its stunning record of arrests and pretrial detention of kids. While detention rates for arrested kids in other counties throughout Tennessee hovered around 5%, Rutherford County's was 48%. And this wasn't an accident. Years earlier, the presiding judge over the juvenile justice system, who I talked about earlier, allowed individual kids to be detained if they were unruly or they represented, quote unquote, a true threat, calling this process a filtering process. Using those words to detain kids that you see as unruly has the banality reminiscent to me of Nazi propaganda. And the story of the judge who presided over this whole mess is a cautionary tale in electing judges to such important roles. She reportedly passed the bar only after 5 tries. She apparently had a George Santos problem because her campaign literature claimed that she had worked for DOJ identifying serial killers when in fact she worked at a private company and worked as a private investigator in divorce cases. And even her judicial service was pockmarked by red flags. Among them, while most juvenile justice systems are cloaked in privacy and confidentiality, this judge, Judge Davenport, had a monthly radio segment for years talking about her work as a juvenile justice judge. In one episode, she remarked, without a bit of embarrassment or irony, "I've locked up one 7-year-old in 13 years, and that was a heartbreak. But 8 and 9-year-olds and older, that is very common now." She was elected for 2 8-year terms, unopposed. The aftermath of this whole saga, in some ways, continues to play out. All of the cases against the 11 children were eventually dismissed. There is good and bad that came from the saga. A federal judge, Waverly Crenshaw, finally issued a ruling preventing arrests of juveniles without a hearing in the county, and his decision cut juvenile detention rates from roughly 1,000 a year to less than 100. Officer Templeton was disciplined, not very hard, but she was reassigned. She had a 3-day suspension, and she was put on 6 months of disciplinary probation. Judge Davenport stepped down in 2022 after Democratic lawmakers prepared to remove her from the bench. But the judicial supervisors who approved the arrests, Amy Anderson and Sherry Hamlet, were reappointed in 2017 and 2019, respectively. Eventually, the victims of this whole saga filed a class action that the city settled for $6 million, denying any wrongdoing. And in January, just this year, the legislature finally passed a bill that at least protected juveniles against interrogations without their guardians or parents being present, but it didn't get to the nub of the problem. Tennessee still has no minimum age for arrest and no prohibition or even limits under the circumstances when kids can be arrested at schools. But the Rutherford Juvenile Justice Center is going strong and recently created its own marketing video. You can see it online. The video touts that the center is, quote, easily accessible with plenty of lodging. Yeah, that's the problem. But Tammy Garrett, in the aftermath of the public outcry around this saga, she went on a bit of a speaking tour defending her kids, consistent with how she always acted toward them. She's now the superintendent of a different school system. And just a few days ago, she helped celebrate the National Bullying Prevention and Unity Day. We need more people like Tammy Garrett. If you want to learn more about the events and players in this tragedy, you can listen to a podcast called The Children of Rutherford County, which was released just this week by Serial Productions, the New York Times, ProPublica, and the Nashville Public Radio. This is Jim Walden. Thank you for listening.
Hey everyone, Harry here. Hope you're enjoying the content from all the friends of our channel, great experts in their fields all. I want to thank them for stepping up to the plate while I'm away. I'll be back soon, and I'm looking forward to resuming the daily videos. Talk to you later.